The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
Where strange lights speed beyond reason across a clear night sky.
The house at the end of the road where disembodied voices whisper and strange noises make the living shiver.
Lurking shadows hiding on the edge of the woods just outside your back door.
Odd, true events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole. I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander. I'm Wes, and that's my wife Beth sitting across me.
Hello. And for those of you returning, thank you for supporting our show. And for those of you new to our show, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, for all you fellow wanderers who don't know, we had some excitement this week.
We did.
Beth was a call-in on Jim Harold's podcast. We've been listening to the Campfire and Paranormal podcast since the very beginning. And she thought about putting in a submission a while ago for the Campfire Stories. She finally did it.
I did. And the whole experience was so great. Jim Harold is the nicest guy. He was so kind and, of course, super professional. And it was so exciting for me to get to tell him about the experience we had last July with a disembodied voice. So if you like listening to people's stories about all kinds of paranormal experiences they've had, check out Jim Harold's Campfire.
Yeah, definitely check out Jim. He has some awesome podcasts. And while you're at it, please tell your friends about Where Our Minds Wander. Also, make sure to subscribe, follow, and leave us a review, please. It's really important.
Yes, please follow us on the app of your choice. That's the number one most important thing. But also tell your friends about us. And then when you have a moment, rate the show and leave a quick written review. We'd really appreciate it.
That we certainly would.
So, what are you going to share with us tonight?
I'm going to talk about Edison and his spirit phone. For those of you that know about it, perhaps you'll learn a little something new. And for those of you who've never heard about it, perhaps you'll find it interesting. A victim of a Metrolink train crash dies on impact. But his fiancé, brother, and parents received 35 phone calls from his cell for hours after. The messages are nothing but static. A man calls a delivery company a week after the death of his mother to cancel her orders. The person on the other end says she had called herself the day before to cancel, saying she had to go away unexpectedly.
Oh.
Tales of phone calls, texts, emails, and letters from beyond the grave have existed for over 100 years. Around the turn of the 20th century, spiritualism was all the rage. Societies sprang up all over the country, and mediums were popular dinner guests. At the same time, electricity was first being used to light rooms and make images move on screens. One giant of the industrial age, Thomas Edison, believed it was possible to combine the two phenomena, spiritualism and electricity, and communicate with the dead. His desire to do so and to outdo his rival Nikola Tesla began an invention race where Edison did a lot of talking about how he was going to do it, and there's speculation to this day over whether or not he ever succeeded. In 1920, Edison made some shocking claims in the American magazine. He said, quote, "I have been working for some time building an apparatus to see if it is possible for personalities which have left this earth to communicate with us." The same month, in an interview with Scientific American, Edison said, quote, "I have been thinking of some time of a machine or apparatus which could be operated by personalities which have passed on to another existence or sphere." But Edison was wary of the fake mediums and phony seances that many people fell prey to during this time, and he wasn't all interested in involving what he called any occult, mystifying, mysterious, or weird means employed by so-called mediums in his invention process. He was also quoted as calling so-called mediums crude and childish, and that too often people permitted themselves to be hypnotized into thinking their imaginations were actualities. His spirit phone would rely entirely on scientific methods, most notably the quantum entanglement and special relativity theories of Albert Einstein. As Edison put it, I am engaged in the construction of one such apparatus now, and I hope to be able to finish it before very many months pass. Edison's thinking went along the lines of, since it's possible to convert mass into energy, then it isn't a stretch to think that the living people become energy once their bodies break down. And if entangled particles can affect each other across great distances, then perhaps there is a way for the energy to interact with us. I don't claim that our personalities pass on to another existence or sphere, Edison told Scientific American. I don't claim anything because I don't know anything about the subject. For that matter, no human being does.
Well put, Edison.
That it is. But I do claim that it is possible to construct an apparatus which will be so delicate that if there are any personalities in another existence or sphere who wish to get in touch with us in this existence or sphere, the apparatus will at least give them a better opportunity to express themselves than the tilting tables and raps on Ouija boards and mediums and other crude methods now reported to be the only means of communication.
Wow, it seems like he really didn't like mediums.
Well, I think he felt like it could be, there's too much hoax going on.
Yeah.
And maybe he was like Houdini in the respect that he didn't like the idea of people being taken advantage of during the times of grief. I'm just speculating, but maybe that's why.
You could be right.
Quickly dubbed Edison's spirit phone by the media, few details were leaked about the actual building of the contraption itself. Edison was so tight-lipped about the actual building of the apparatus that there were some historians who doubt it was ever attempted or built at all. But he did talk a good game. Even if no actual spirit phone is ever known to exist, he described his invention, again in Scientific American, at great length, as a large, highly sensitive valve that was manipulated by a spirit who would magnify anything they were trying to say. He also explained in great detail his reasoning behind why he thought the spirit phone should work. He saw all life as interconnected, and once our bodies were gone, our essence of our life would simply rejoin all other essences out in the world.
Which I wonder if that was pretty groundbreaking.
I do hope that our personality survives, Edison said. If it does, then my apparatus ought to be of some use. That is why I am now at work on the most sensitive apparatus I have ever undertaken to build, and I await the results with the keenest interest.
He really did talk it up. It seems like he wanted everyone to know what he was planning to do.
Well, of course he did. One of his employees, who just happened to be working on the device, had recently died, and Edison told Scientific American that his invention did work. His deceased employee ought to be the first to use it if he is able to do so. The media was so enamored with Edison's explanation of his idea that a French cartoon from the time depicted a depressed husband being pestered by his mother-in-law beyond the grave via Edison's spirit phone. Oh my God. I'd like to see that cartoon. They, of course, took liberties with drawing the phone as they imagined it would look, since Edison himself never supplied any drawings to any publications. Newspapers and magazines printed their own articles showing their version of sketches of the phone, based on what vague information Edison had gave in interviews. The most common version depicted phonograph parts with a fluted horn containing an electrode attached to a wooden box containing a microphone. In 1933, an issue of Modern Mechanics published an article claiming that Edison had done it. He had built his spirit phone, although the article pointed out that Edison never called it that. They said he would only refer to it as a valve. Supposedly, Edison gathered with other scientists and spiritualists in a secret laboratory to record their voices in presence of the dead. The article went on to say that the group used speakers, generators, and experimental equipment, including the spirit phone, in which a tiny pencil of light from a powerful lamp bore through the darkness to hit an active surface, which to me doesn't sound like a phone at all.
No, it sounds more like a loudspeaker, although I don't get how it would produce sound. But if he was so vague with his details, it seems like some of the magazines were going more on conjecture than anything else.
Well, the light was supposed to pick up the existence of the tiniest particles of energy.
Yeah, but couldn't those particles have just been dust? Or was it supposed to pick up vibrations? Ugh, Edison, if you'd only explained yourself better.
But it really doesn't matter, because after tense hours spent watching the delicate instruments, absolutely nothing happened.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So for years, several historians believed Edison's spirit phone was simply a great joke, since no blueprints or prototypes were ever found. But there is evidence that Edison at least thought about it. In 2015, the French journalist Philippe Baudin found a rare version of Edison's diary in a thrift store in France that included a chapter that wasn't in the 1948 English edition.
Good find.
I know.
Can you imagine? You're in a thrift store and you find a copy of Edison's journal that no one's seen before.
I can't imagine. In the chapter, Edison discusses his theories of the spirit and how it might be possible to contact one. But interestingly enough, many historians think that Edison's interest in contacting the dead had nothing to do with his beliefs in an afterlife at all, but in the desire to outdo his rival, Nikola Tesla.
Oh.
One evening in 1901, Tesla was experimenting with a crystal radio powered by electromagnetic waves when he picked up some unusual signals. He found them so strange that he wrote in his diary, quote, "My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural, and I was alone in my laboratory that night."
Yeah, that could freak you out.
I would say so. I'd like to know what he heard.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see his diary. 17 years later, in 1918, he wrote in his diary about the similar sounds he had heard after tinkering with yet another radio. This time, he was cautious about attributing them to ghostly sources. He wrote, "The sounds I'm listening to every night at first appear to be human voices, conversing back and forth in a language I cannot understand. I find it difficult to imagine that I am actually hearing real voices from people not of this planet. There must be a more simple explanation that has so far eluded me."
That's still creepy, though. Do you remember the first night we were messing around with our mics?
Oh, yeah, I do. Oh, our mics, yes.
Yes, and we heard like mumbling, incoherent voices.
That we did.
And for a split second, we just like looked at each other, and it was so creepy until we realized we were accidentally eavesdropping on a conversation outside 3 stories below us.
They're pretty sensitive. Yeah, it was a little unnerving. And Tesla figured out the explanation for the voices he was hearing too. The type of radio he was using is capable of picking up very low frequency signals from unseen sources like electrical storms, atmospheric disturbances, and household electronics. When you hear it all together, it can sound like disembodied voices.
Aha.
It's a good thing he didn't have an Alexa back then, huh?
Don't say it. She'll turn on.
It's possible, and one could even speculate, that Edison was well aware of everything Tesla was doing. And if you heard about Tesla's strange voices phenomenon, he may have decided not to be outdone. Which I can see him doing that because he was very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
What we do know is that Edison died in 1931 without producing any evidence of spirits any more than Tesla had through his radio years earlier. But death apparently didn't stop him. Allegedly, Edison made a pact with his engineer, William Walter Dinwiddie, that whoever died first would try to make contact with the other. Edison outlived Dinwiddie, but there's no evidence that Edison ever made contact with him. However, during a seance in 1941, a group of researchers claims to have contacted both Dinwiddie and Edison, receiving instructions for how to build a working spirit phone.
I guess they would know, huh? Since they were on the other side.
Yeah, the group closely followed the instructions, but again, nothing happened. You know, when I first heard about Edison's ghost phone, I thought immediately to myself of Frank's ghost box, which is a device designed to communicate with the dead. It uses radio frequencies to channel spirits' voices. However, Frank Sumption, the inventor of Frank's box, has never said he got the idea from Edison.
You know, I was thinking the same thing. So for those of you who haven't seen a Frank's box, it's basically a radio that's been altered so it randomly scans through channels. And the premise is that spirits will manipulate the energy and clear words or phrases will come through the static.
Yeah, which makes me wonder if Frank's box is actually a version of what had frightened Tesla.
Oh, you could be right. Poor Tesla, though. I keep thinking about him alone in his lab at night and hearing all these garbled phantom voices coming through his radio. It had to be so creepy for him.
I can imagine it was if he was sitting in the dark by himself, and all these strange voices are all around him.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Hey, did you know? In Austria during the 1800s, women had a rather interesting way of letting a man know she was into him. While attending parties, single ladies would eye single men from across the room. The lady would casually go over to the refreshment table and pick up a slice of apple, which they'd promptly tuck into their armpit. Then, the woman would dance, really dance, until they worked up quite a sweaty funk. At the end of the night, if the bachelorette still had her eye on one of the available men, she would present him with her armpit-soaked apple slice. If the guy was into her, well, he'd take a bite out of her prepared fruit. Who'da thunk it?
So, Beth, what did you find that piqued your interest this week?
I'm going to tell you about a rather terrifying werewolf-like murderous beast.
Okay, now you have my attention.
I figured. The beast was said to be the size of a calf or cow or horse. With razor-sharp teeth and a lean frame, the wolf-like beast took giant strides, sometimes on just 2 legs. Its fur was tawny to russet in color, with a stripe of black down its back, and its face had an elongated head, flat snout, pointed ears, and a broad chest. It could repel bullets, had fire in its eyes, and often attacked multiple times in one day, often dropping on victims from above in broad daylight, ripping their throats out, or in some cases tearing the head entirely off the victim. Sometimes the terrifying animal was accompanied by an unknown man.
Wow. So you're telling me this guy is friends with a murderous beast, man?
I think it was more like the unknown man controlled the murderous beast man.
Perhaps so.
The Beast of Gevaudon attacked or killed between 100 to 300 people over a 3-year period in the Gévaudan region of France, beginning in 1764. Gévaudan was a remote region in France, populated by farmers and sheep herders. Its small hamlets were isolated from each other, surrounded by fields, rocky terrain, and forests. The first attack occurred while 14-year-old Jeanne Boulet was watching her sheep. Several deaths followed, and at first, people chalked it up as just dangers of the job. But on August 8th, another little girl was killed. Allegedly, she said the animal who attacked her was, quote, a horrible beast, unquote.
As opposed to being attacked by a cute and cuddly beast.
Yeah, this was no Care Bear.
It doesn't sound it.
At the end of August, another young shepherd, a boy this time, disappeared. He was found partially eaten. 4 more kills happened in September, just as gruesomely. They were found with their throats torn out or their heads gnawed completely off, and the villagers of Gévaudan knew they had to do something. Bounties were offered, and hunters swarmed the area, all in search of the, quote, wolf but not a wolf, end quote, that terrorized them. On October 8th, just hours after another mauling, the beast was seen at Château de la Baume, stalking yet another herdsman. Hunters followed the animal into the estate's woods and managed to flush it into the open. The hunters then shot a volley of musket fire into the creature. The beast fell, but then rose to its feet and ran off, seemingly unhurt. A local French paper wrote at the end of 1764, quote, hunters who are in pursuit have neither been able to stop it because it is more agile than they, nor can they lure it into their traps because it surpasses in cunning, nor engage in combat when it presents itself to them because its terrifying appearance weakens their courage, disturbs their vision, sets their hands shaking, and neutralizes their skill, end quote.
Wow. It kind of sounds like what they saw at Skinwalker Ranch.
It sure does. Not just French papers picked up the story. News of the seemingly supernatural beast's attacks reached as far as Boston, Massachusetts. In February 1765, the Denevils, a father-son hunter duo from Normandy, arrived in Gévaudan along with 8 trained bloodhounds, intent on eliminating the beast. The father, Jean-Charles, boasted that he'd already killed 1,200 wolves. They hunted for 4 months. They were unsuccessful. In response, Etienne Lafont, a regional government delegate, and Captain Jean-Baptiste Dumel, a leader of the local infantry, organized the first military-type strategic attack, gathering 30,000 men into a regiment. Dumel left poison bait and even had some of the soldiers dress as peasant women, since the majority of attacks had been done to women and children.
Oh my God. Can you imagine being that guy? The lone soldier dressed up and left for bait?
I know.
But even worse, they put him in a peasant woman's dress. It's like so humiliating. I'd want to be eaten by a beast.
Well, let's hope he got a couple extra tankards of ale as a reward.
Oh, yeah, I would have written that into my contract.
And speaking of rewards, the reward for killing the beast eventually equaled a year's salary for most working men.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah. Upon seeing the beast, Captain Dumel described it as having a, quote, breast as wide as a horse, a body as long as a leopard's, and fur that was red with a black stripe, end quote. And Dumel concluded, "You will undoubtedly think like I do that this is a monster hybrid, the father of which is a lion. What its mother was remains to be seen."
Yeah, who knows was out there mating in the woods at this time.
Duhamel and his 30,000 men were unable to catch the beast, however. But strangely, several townsfolk, including young children, were able to fight the beast off, like 10-year-old Jacques Portefeuille on January 12, 1765. He was among a group of children between the ages of 7 and 12, herding cattle in a meadow. When the beast attacked, the children huddled together armed with sticks and inexplicably scared the beast off. When King Louis XV heard of the children's bravery, he rewarded them, including paying for Portefeuille's education. On August 11th, 1765, while crossing the river Dege, my American mouth does not do well with these French names. I'm trying my best, but I'm sure I've pronounced all of them wrong. So anyway, 19-year-old Marie-Jeanne Vallée was crossing a river with her sister, and she fought the beast off with a bayonet attached to a pole. She did wound it before it ran off. Her heroic encounter earned her the name the Maid of Gévaudan, and a statue was erected in her honor in the village of Auvers.
Well, it sounds like she was prepared while she was out there.
I think
She
were.
had a bayonet on a large pole.
Yeah, I think at this point they were. As the stories of these children fighting off the beast continued to reach King Louis, he decided it was about time to send his own royal hunters to take down the animal. In June 1765, Francois Antoine, the king's 71-year-old lieutenant of the hunt, arrived in Gévaudan with his son and a group of court-trained hunters. 3 months later, in September, Antoine did it. He took down a large gray wolf measuring 80 centimeters or 31 inches high, 1.7 meters or 5 feet 7 inches long.
Wow.
And weighing 60 kilograms or 130 pounds.
That's a big boy.
Yeah. The wolf, now known as Le Loup de Chaise, was declared the murderous beast, and Antoine's official statement, quote, "We declare by the present report signed from our own hand, we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence, we believe this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage," end quote. His report was further bolstered by attack survivors who confirmed the corpse showed scars relative to the wounds they believed they'd inflicted on it. As a precautionary measure, Antoine stayed in the area, tracking and killing the alleged mate of the beast and at least one pup. though some sources say 2, which was described as bigger than its mother. Upon examination, the pup was noted as having a double set of dew claws, which was unusual. He had the original beast stuffed and sent to Versailles. Touted as a hero and savior of Gévaudan, Antoine returned to Paris and received a large sum of money as well as fame, titles, and awards. And so all was well. The beast had been eradicated until 2 months later when the attacks began all over again.
Oh, God. No, that had to be a huge letdown.
In the following 18 months, a reported 30 to 35 fatalities occurred, exactly as they had before. But King Louis, convinced that Antoine had killed the thing, refused to offer any more help. Frightened but fed up, the locals decided to take care of the beast once and for all. Farmer Jean Chastel, thrown into prison for previously leading Antoine's men into a bog, decided he could do it. Out of prison now, he spotted the animal on the slopes of Mount Mouchat, took aim, and brought the beast down with a single silver bullet. June 19th, 1767, the Beast of Gevaudon was no more. But the question remains, what exactly was the beast?
It was a werewolf. That's why he shot it with a silver bullet.
Yeah, I found that part very interesting. It's a question historians and scientists have debated for centuries. Suggested animal explanations range from escaped lion to hyena to not just one beast, but an entire wolf pack.
Well, that would explain how there were multiple attacks in a single day, I guess, or why Anton also stuck around to take down 3 more wolves.
True, but many of the accounts don't describe a wolf at all. It's more like a werewolf on 2 feet. And I do think it's so cool that Chastel's bullet was allegedly made of silver.
Yeah. I mean, sounds more like a werewolf or a skinwalker.
Yeah, could be. A more disturbing theory is that a human carried out the attacks and then spread the beast story as a way to deflect attention. Some have even named Chastel, he was the man who successfully shot the animal,
right,
as a suspect. Some have wondered how Chastel was successful after thousands were not, and with just a single bullet. It's been suggested that the wolf must have been laying down or sitting still for a long period of time in order for Chastel to deliver the fatal shot, which goes against every single account preceding it of the animal's behavior. Some imply that this might show that Chastel had some control over the animal or that it might have been tethered. So, could he have been the unknown man that some victims claim to have seen near the beast?
Oh, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. Wolf-like beasts were not just isolated to Gévaudan. In 1693, one appeared in Benet. Several accounts popped up in Europe in the 1800s, including the Vivarais case, where 20 people were killed between 1809 and 1813. A tawny-colored beast with striped fur killed 300 sheep over a 6-month period during 1810 in England's Lake District. Between 1875 and 1879, there were reported attacks again in France and in Ireland. And then in 1893, 3 people were killed by a blunt-snouted beast with a smooth tail in Trasna, Russia.
Interesting. So, what do you think it was?
Well, honestly, at first, I was thinking it was probably a wolf pack with a massive alpha. And we know that people see a lot of exaggerated things when they're under attack, when they're under stress.
Yep.
And this thing had been terrorizing them for years. But on the flip side, it's very unusual for wolves to attack people at all. So I don't know.
Wolf attacks are pretty rare. I prefer to think it's still out there lurking, waiting in the shadows.
Maybe, but you aren't using me as bait.
No, of course not. I mean, who would I do the show with?
As always, you can check our sources in our show notes if you want to know more.
Yeah, and don't be shy. Follow us on Facebook at Where Our Minds Wander and check out our website at whereourmindswander.com.
So I guess this about wraps up our episode,
I think so.
and we'll see all you wanderers again next week.
Yeah, see you soon.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment. It really helps us move up the list so people can find us. See you next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.